I just want to say thank you so much to all of you on the front line and everyone involved at the NHS for the most incredible work that you do every single day. We are all so proud of you. We make sure that we're outside our front doors every single Thursday at 8 p.m. and just keep up the good work, stay safe, and thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. I know you've heard that a million times, but we cannot thank you enough.
Start now. How's lockdown been for you? Because I know you're obviously a very active person.
Well, I think it's taken some adjustment for everybody, hasn't it? To kind of come up with the new normal, but actually in a strange kind of way, despite all the terrible things that are going on in the world, and obviously everyone's thinking about, people who've lost loved ones and all the families that have been really, really affected by it. It's also given everybody a time to kind of take a stop and think about their lives and, what's important in life. And I think certainly myself, it's the first time I've stopped clock watching, stopped rushing for everything. I've stopped to kind of be in the moment. And I really appreciated just being around my family, which, I'm always traveling and working. I'm not around them as much as I'd like to be. And also just enjoying simple things like loads of walks in the park and being back with nature. And then, I don't think any of us want the cars back on the road, just having peace out on the roads and out in the parks and no planes in the sky, or very few planes in the sky. It's been quite an eye-opener, actually, the last 6 months. I think it's going to transform and change everybody quite deeply, actually.
I totally agree with you. I've loved it, walking out. I think it will, and hopefully change people for the better. The one thing I guess that it has stopped you. You're coming into really your season, aren't you, with the tennis, the summer, and I know it's all been put back. Are you missing it? Put it that way.
Yeah, of course I am missing. Normally my life is structured around the tennis tour, so it's very busy. There's hardly any moments in between to stop and think. Just on to the next tournament. And of course I do really, really miss the tour and being around it all, and sort of that constant chatter and buzz about tennis matches. But in, like I said, in a way, it's kind of given me time to reflect and think about things. And I hope in some way we'll come back to some sense of normality and we'll get back to something, but I think it's going to be a little bit different in the future, that's for sure.
I mean, on the series we've been doing with various sports stars, we've asked about their careers. Do you mind if I just quickly run through a couple of questions I've jotted down for you, almost like a quick fire round? Number one, what was your best moment in tennis, if there was one?
One of the strongest memories I have is playing who was my idol, Chris Evert, on court 1 at Wimbledon in the 3rd round. And, I kind of took up the game because of her and Bjorn Borg. And Chris Evert was such a huge idol to me, and was actually incredibly giving to me as a junior on the tour as well. So I have very strong memories. When you play your idol, out on one of the big show courts at Wimbledon, it was quite a big moment for me. But then on top of that, I did win the juniors there that same year. So going up into the Royal Box and accepting the cup for the Junior Wimbledon Championships from the Duchess of Kent was quite a big moment. And also I'd pick out another time, playing at the Albert Hall is quite special. It's an amazing venue for tennis. And to represent your country, which I did in... it was the Whiteman Cup, actually, which doesn't exist anymore because we have two team of competitions for women's tennis, the Fed Cup and the Whiteman Cup. But to represent your country at the Albert Hall was quite a big moment, which that will always be a standout moment for me.
You actually picked a time to play with some unbelievable players. Who's the best you played against?
I'm going to pick out 2 people, actually. I mean, Martina Navratilova, one of the greatest that's ever played the game, alongside Chris Evert, obviously. But Martina, when I played her when she was at the top of the sport, and I played her a few times, with her lefty style, lefty serve, and that real attacking game of serve volley, and the way that Martina took fitness to a new level in women's tennis. It was pretty difficult to stay on court with her for longer than 40 minutes, actually. But she was one of the greatest that I've ever played, for sure. And then Steffi Graf you know, not many people talk about Steffi enough, actually. And I played her when she was 15, when she was already higher ranked than me on the tour. And she went on to become one of the greatest that's ever played the game. She won 22 Grand Slam titles. And of course, Serena Williams has only just overtaken her, really, in the last few years. But one of the all-time great champions, and to have played her on the tour was quite wonderful, really, when I look back.
You mentioned the Albert Hall. What's the best location apart from the Albert Hall, or the best venue you've played at?
Definitely Wimbledon. I mean, Wimbledon is very, very special. It's an extraordinary atmosphere there. It's part of, you know, the history of tennis. Everybody who picks up a racket as a junior wants to play at Wimbledon, I believe. But, you know, it just has a unique atmosphere there. It's the beautiful grass courts that are so manicured so perfectly. You know, the surroundings around the courts, everything is just perfectly put together with all these beautiful flowers and foliage and the strawberries and cream. The crowds, everything about Wimbledon, and that you can. I always say it's like playing in almost like a cathedral type atmosphere, where it's like a pin drop. You can hear with every ball that's being hit and the umpire scores. It's got a unique atmosphere, which will, I don't know, it's very difficult to replicate that in any other tournament.
When you beat Wendy Turnbull in the Virginia Slims, were you able to celebrate? I've read a lot about, you know, you were incredibly young when you were, you know, at the peak of your powers, if you like. Were you able to celebrate? And can you remember how you celebrated after that?
You know, I can't believe you've mentioned that, because that was a big moment for me. And I'd just come off a very, very big slump, actually. I'd gone on a losing streak, which is quite tough when you're playing tennis. And, you know, tennis players, and I guess all athletes, rely on confidence. And if you're going on a bit of a downward spiral, it's quite difficult to stop the rot. And I think I'd kind of reached rock bottom, and then it was like, right, you know, just throw all your cares to the wind and just go for it. And I couldn't believe I came through that whole tournament and ended up beating Wendy, who was then, I think, round about 4 in the world, I think. So it was, for me, it was a huge win. But I was on my own. I was like, I think I was 17 or 18 years of age in San Diego in this venue. And have you heard of Berry Gordy?
No.
He was the founder, I believe, of Motown Records, and he was there watching that match. So Berry Gordy, I think he worked with you know, the Jacksons and Diana Ross and all that kind of era. And anyway, he was incredibly charming and sent a message to say, you know, congratulations, and would you like to come and celebrate with breakfast with myself and some of my team the next morning? And at the time, I didn't really know who he was, but anyway, someone said to me, no, you need to go and have breakfast with him, because that will be very special. So I did. I went and had my breakfast celebrations with him, and it was absolutely wonderful and a very special moment, actually, because of course I then since found out how big a man he was in the world of music.
That's fantastic. You talk about the loneliness. Were you on your own? Were your parents ever with you, or how did it work? Did you have a manager? Did you have a coach with you? Or, I mean, I've read about you sort of on buses traveling from place to place. It sounds very romantic, to be fair, but it does sound lonely.
You know what? It was quite a lonely life. I think the life of a tennis player, you know, if you're going from the very bottom and you're working your way up, you know, it's not so glamorous down at the bottom end, and you do spend a lot of time traveling, or certainly back then I'm talking about, because of course back then you didn't have mobile phones and computers, and, you know, you used to spend hours on the phone trying to book a flight to the next venue or Greyhound bus to to wherever you were traveling across America. But you did spend a lot of time on your own in hotels or motels or travel lodges or whatever, and you'd sort of take a book to dinner, and you know, I used to take sewing kits and, you know, embroidery things. I did. I mean, when you look back on it, it was a different era and a different time, but you know, I think perhaps it's different today with young kids when they're constantly occupied by their social media and their phones and everything. It's a completely different world, isn't it? But yeah, certainly for me, there were big elements of loneliness, but also equally I loved the travel, I loved the cultures, I loved you know, meeting people from all different cultures around the world. And I did stay with a lot of different families in digs, and I really enjoyed that.
Sure.
And for many years afterwards, you know, even some today that I'm still in touch with, who I stayed with as as like a 15, 16-year-old somewhere in the world. So, you know, it was a real education through travel, actually, at times, but there were many ups and downs with it as well.
How big an influence were your parents in I want to pick your brains, actually, because my son's a cricketer, 16-year-old cricketer at Kent. He wants to be a cricketer, and you know, we often talk about the influence of coaches and parents. What about with you? Did they push you? Were they hard on you, or were they just encouraging?
I would say my parents were very encouraging. You know, they didn't tend to travel with me that much, actually. I mean, hardly at all. I mean, maybe in the junior stages, being dropped off at junior tournaments. But once it went international, then I actually left England when I was about 15, and I went to live in Houston in Texas with my coach, who was an Aussie guy called Owen Davidson, who'd won the kind of Grand Slam of mixed doubles with Billie Jean King. He won massive events with Billie Jean King. So that was where my base was, and he tended to travel to tournaments with me or not. It depended, you know, how much you could afford to take a coach with you. Because if you think about it, if you're traveling with another person, you're not just paying for yourself, you're then, it's the equivalent of having a holiday, isn't it, where you're having to sort of pay for hotels. But then if you're taking a coach, you're going to have to pay for 2 hotel rooms and two flights, and then coaching fees on top. So it becomes very, very expensive. So, you know, you'd pick and choose which tournaments your coach could go to, how much you could afford, and took it from there. But then I think you grow as a person quite often when you spend a little bit of time on your own as well. And I've heard sort of modern day players say that when they've gone through periods of time without coaches as well, you kind of, sometimes that's a good balance to have, I think.
How does your professional career compare with your other professional career, which is treasure hunt, which is obviously celebrity wrestling, which is all kinds of amazing television jobs that you've had?
Research.
And you know, I scoured everywhere to see celebrity wrestling. I can't find it anywhere, which may be a good or a bad thing. I don't know.
It's probably quite a good thing, I think. I think my kids would probably cringe if they watched it back now. Yeah, well, you've done your research.
How does it compare? Which one have you enjoyed?
One of the things of lockdown.
Yes.
I was just going to say, one of the things of lockdown, I've cleared out the attic and cleared out sort of different cupboards, and I have come across my solitaire outfit, which I wore for celebrity wrestling. So that's quite funny. I've refound all the very glittery outfits that we wore for ITV. It's quite amazing. You'll
be an absolute wow at your next fancy dress party, I'm sure.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I look like a Power Ranger.
What have you enjoyed? Which show and which one have you enjoyed the best? Or they're so different, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, when I look back at Treasure Hunt, I mean, I was so fortunate to be offered to do that show when I was so young. I was about 21. I'd literally just come off the tour. And in many ways, I feel like I was a little bit too naive. I didn't probably completely appreciate all of these amazing places and historical venues that I was going to, and all these wonderful sort of country homes and castles and everything. I'd almost love to go back and do it again now as a much older person and revisit those places. But it was absolutely wonderful. Celebrity wrestling was not what I expected at all. I mean, it was built up to me and sold to me as kind of like the new Gladiators and a new kind of fitness show. And it was, I think, originally named Combat. And I was thinking at the time, well, I'm quite fit and I feel fitter at this age than I had done when I was younger. And I took it on that basis, but I had no idea I was going into these wrestling kind of things. But in a strange way, you know, there was an awful lot of martial arts in what I was taught with the wrestling. So I learned a lot of things in that show, which even to this day, I think, gosh, if I need to self-protect or whatever, I think a lot of people could benefit from some of those wrestling moves. And then I found out that professional rugby players actually use a lot of those same wrestling type moves to get people down on the ground. And, you know, it's kind of like combat in professional rugby. So, you know, it was interesting. I did learn a lot from that. But the best show that I did was for the BBC. It was a documentary about homelessness.
Yes, Famous Richard Homeless, it's called, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a strong title, obviously, because it grabs people as a little bit of like a reality show, but it wasn't really like that at all. It was it was guaranteed, or it was intended that it was going to bring the truths home to people in their houses about what the problems are with homelessness. And
Yes.
and I think it achieved what it set out to do, which was to really bring home what exactly it is. And it's not about giving someone a wide berth in a tube station and going, oh gosh, get off your feet and get off your backside and get up and go and get a job. What do you think you're doing? I'm going off to work and you're just sitting there. And I learned so much about homelessness. And interestingly enough, one of the homeless gentlemen that I came across on that program, and it was purely by chance because I was sleeping rough in a cardboard box with somebody who they'd put me with, who was a homeless man. Another gentleman walked past and we got to know each other. He ended up sleeping in the cardboard box with us. And I've kept in touch with him ever since. And that was many, many years ago. Oh, it made me cry if I even start talking about it. But we kept in touch. He's off the streets now for a long, long time. He's completely transformed his life. And he is now working on the front line at the NHS. In the ward. So I'm going to stop crying if I talk about it. But anyway, I'm so proud of him because you can't believe that homeless man that I was with on the streets in a cardboard box, who had sores all over his head and long hair and looked like absolutely disheveled and like a completely disheveled human being, is now a frontline worker for the NHS, looking like a fit, healthy, extraordinary human being who's completely, as I say, transformed his life and is so inspirational. So anyway, I can't believe you've got me talking about that. Sorry.
Do you know,
anyway, we were in contact literally a few days ago because he's always sending me his wonderful pictures. So anyway, I'm really proud of him.
It's absolutely that's absolutely fantastic. And well, I think everybody's emotional at this time, aren't you? And that is just such a wonderful story.
Yeah, well, we've been in touch for many years, and he is a special man, and I think that he understands, obviously, homelessness more than anybody. And so for what he's been through with his journey and how he's come through it and where he's at now, and when I see his wonderful pictures of him in his NHS uniform, and he's trained for many years now and been working so hard, but to see his transformation is extraordinary.
Listen, I didn't want to interview you to upset you.
I know, that's right. No, I'm fine. It's just I talk about it. It's just because I'm so proud of him.
That's fantastic, and the emotion from you just comes through. It's absolutely brilliant. That's fantastic. Listen, the last
sorry. I wish I could show you the pictures on here, because you're on the screen. I can't show you the pictures, but anyway, I would show you that when the interview's over. I'll send you the pictures because he looks, it's incredible.
That's an absolute. I don't know what to say. I don't know where to go.
I'm sorry. I know.
Don't worry. The only thing I was going to say to you after that was: is there a better TV name than Game, Set and Mats?
Oh gosh.
Which has to be the greatest TV name for a sporting show ever.
Yeah, I have to say that was very, very clever. I didn't come up with that name, but it is a special name, and I did enjoy that show enormously. I did that show with Mats Verlander for about, I think, 7.5, maybe 8 years. And he's a wonderful pundit. He's an amazing person to work with. Obviously, he won 7 Grand Slam titles, but you're right, it was a fabulous name for a show, and has had a real cult following, and still does actually to this day. It's it's a lot of fun, and I think it's if you're a tennis fan, it's a great show just to catch up with what's going on in the world of tennis.
Last one for you. What's after this? Hopefully, this dreadful pandemic and this dreadful situation passes. What's coming up for Annabel Croft? What's in the pipeline?
Well, I had a really full diary, probably the most full diary I've ever had in 2020. And I was so excited about all these projects I was going to be involved with, and all the tennis coverage that I was going to do for Amazon. And, I was going to be doing a lot of hosting jobs as well. So I'm kind of hoping that some of the tennis stuff will come back. We're not sure if actual tennis will come back before, next year perhaps, but there's slight possibilities, but there's also some alternative arrangements taking place with even if it doesn't come back. So I know that there's a couple of projects that I'm involved in with that, but obviously tennis is my big love. And so, you know, I hope that when things do get back to normal, I will get back to, you know, being involved with the tennis tour again. Also, I just love, I've been doing so much yoga in this lockdown. And
Power yoga.
I love power yoga actually. But I've done yoga for about 6 or 7 years now, but I wish I'd found it earlier in my life. But being in lockdown and being able to access all these amazing teachers online has been quite a revelation. And being able to have no time pressure, never checking my watch, but enjoying these yoga classes every day. And it's already had a massive impact on my body. So I
Fantastic.
I do want to do more yoga. But equally, I think as we talked about at the start when we were chatting, it's really sort of focuses your mind on what you do want to do. And I think this period of lockdown has definitely made me think that I want to do much more with homelessness, actually. Even though I have other charities that I work with, Rainbow Trust is another really big charity that I'm involved with. And then there's another one that I'm involved with called the Tall Ships, which does amazing work with underprivileged children and takes them out sailing at sea and transforms their lives when they're at sea. And that was something that weirdly, the week that we went into lockdown, I was due to meet some of the kids that were coming off the ships, having had their lives turned around while they were out at sea, because the Navy is known for many, many years how they can transform underprivileged kids, you know, when they're at sea. So that was another thing that I want to get involved with. But equally, you know, as we talked about with James, my friend from way back on that documentary, it did make me think, gosh, I do want to do way more with homelessness, because I think that in this period of time, you know, you wonder what on earth is going on with those people who have been out on the streets. And even though I know people who run the centres that they can go to, it makes me wonder, did many of them find other alternative arrangements? Did they go into those places? I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see at the end of it when lots of data and stats come out about what's been going on. I don't know what's happened to a lot of the homeless people.
Annabel, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Well,
Thanks so much.
Too. Well, thank you. Took me down a trip down memory lane.
Thanks so much.
Fun.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
and you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Annabel.
Okay. Thank you. They're not easy to do those, are they? Thank you.
Lovely seeing you. Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
and you. Bye. Bye.